Have you guys ever seen the show Smothered before? It's a show that came on TLC a couple years ago, and it follows the lives of 4 different moms and their daughters and how close their relationships are. Personally, I find the show very creepy.
I have saved all of Sarah's baby teeth. They smell so beautiful.
I think a lot of people do, and maybe that's why we watch. It's probably also why it has pretty bad ratings. I bring up that show because Mahek Bukhari and Ansarine Bukhari would have totally been front runners on that show. I mean, look, I told you it followed the lives of 4 different people. They would have stolen the spotlight every single episode. Not because they're so incredibly interesting, but because they want the spotlight more than anyone. Mahek and Ansarine's relationship is so uncomfortable. You might watch some of these videos and hear everything that happened and think, okay, what is going on here? This is weird, especially you guys that are close with a family member. It's like, okay, sure, they're close, but this is like a little too close. I mean, Ansarine was the type of person that I think would get upset if Mahek went off and found other friends. She would feel lonely, isolated, jealous even. And I think it's for one simple reason. Ansarine lived a very, very sheltered life growing up. Her parents never let her have any friends, never let her have any fun. In fact, she wanted to be a flight attendant when she grew up, but her parents kept her from going to college, and they just kept her in this small little bubble. She never got to experience life as a teenager or even as a young adult. Even into her early 20s, they were controlling and judging everything that she did. So in turn, when Ansarine gets older, she gets married and she has a child. One thing that I've always found really, really fascinating in psychology is that parents, if they don't deal with their traumas, they will pass it on to their children almost instantly, completely unbeknownst to them. Because Ansarine lived this incredibly sheltered life, she not only wanted to let her daughter have a fun life, but she wanted to join in. She never resolved what this did to her when she was younger, so she decided to do it all over again by attaching herself to her daughter and living vicariously through her. Ooh, God, that's so creepy. What a fucking creep. Sorry, this is triggering me. Mahek Bukhari was a 24-year-old British TikToker and kind of influencer. Now, I say was, not because she passed away, but because she's in jail. At the time that we researched this, she had about 129,000 subscribers on TikTok, and that number really spiked up after the case broke out and after the trial came to a close. So I estimate that Mahek probably had somewhere between 80,000 to 100,000 followers on TikTok at the time. With this amount of followers, she decided that this was good enough and she could quit going to college and pursue being an influencer full-time. Now, I just want to give you guys a warning. If you're new to my channel or you've only watched a few videos here and there, sure, I'm going to be telling you the story of what happened. And as far as the story goes, we do a lot of research and I try to keep it as neutral as possible. However, if you have committed homicide, you are not immune to me roasting you, okay? Like, you're just not. And if you're somebody that has some of the same traits that I'm about to be talking about in a minute, I apologize. It's just collateral damage because Mahek was pretty corny.
A woman could easily kill a man with the right motivation.
Foreshadowing is a literary device in which—
All right, look, this is where I'm gonna lose some of y'all, but I just have to tell it like it is. So I was going through Mahek's TikTok and it was shocking to me, some of the things I found. A lot of her videos, including her most popular ones, are recycled versions of other people's content. If you're not too familiar with TikTok, there's this big thing that people were doing, especially around 2020, 2021. It still happens now, but it's not as prevalent because we know what you're doing and it's kind of corny, where they take a popular TikTok audio. There's some kind of script that everyone is using. Multiple people are using the same text or whatever on screen, some scenario, and they basically just copy the TikTok by lip syncing the words, stealing someone else's joke.
And bro, we gotta let her know her life is in danger. Just give her a chance, give her a chance. That's it.
These videos would rack up hundreds of thousands to millions of views, even though we had seen the joke before, we had heard the audio before. It was just recycling something that people already liked. And Mahek was a prime culprit of this.
You're breaking up with me because I'm too Mom?
The majority of her popular TikToks were her stealing other people's jokes, lip syncing a popular TikTok audio, and doing her makeup very well. She was a pretty girl. Not a lick of original content was here. Except some of the videos that she had with her mom. Mahek was always making TikTok videos with her mom. There's one saying, when you have an elite relationship with your mom. There were some where, you know, they're just doing jokes with each other, doing little TikTok trends. They were always fully glammed up. They were always in sync. And Mahek had no problem showcasing her mom on her page. And like I told you guys earlier, Aunt Serene had a very, very sheltered life. She's never had fun like this before. She's never had attention. She's never had a beautiful girl best friend that she can go out with. I mean, never mind that it's her daughter. This doesn't register to her. It's so exciting to have all of the things that a teenage girl was supposed to have that she never got, and she's living it now. When we look at some of these videos, they might strike us as a little bit odd, but I firmly believe that to Aunt Serene, this wasn't weird. It just felt good, it just felt right, and she was redoing her younger years with her daughter by her side. Somebody safe, somebody fun, somebody cool. Now, I want to reiterate, being close with your daughter is totally okay. Go on trips, go talk to them on a regular basis, hang out with them, maybe even know their personal life. But I really feel like Mahek and Aunt Serene's relationship, it went a little bit too far. When Mahek was supposed to be going to parties with people her age during high school or her early 20s, she was taking her mom. In one interview, she even said, "She's like a sister to me. We're best friends, and I know I could trust her for anything. That's the reason I would take her." I just feel like you're missing out on so many life experiences if you're attached by the hip to your mom who's 30 years older than you and essentially leeching off of your lifestyle because she never had fun before. But that's what they did. Mahek used her TikTok popularity to take her mom to parties, to hang out with people her age. Her mom was cool. Oh my God. In Aunt Serene's world, she was finally cool. When they showed up at parties, the buzz around the room was literally like, oh, that's Mahek Bakari. She's a really popular TikToker. Oh yeah, and that's her hot mom. And they liked it that way. They felt like they had safety in each other and they felt like they had power. But like I said, I still feel like Mahek was being taken advantage of by her mom. However, it doesn't excuse what happens over the next couple of years. So she would play this role day to day of dedicated 46-year-old mother, wife, just taking care of the home, relaxing, all of that. And by night, she would jet off into her double life with her daughter and they would go out. I mean, in fact, she was the cool mom that could make it easy for Mahek to go out, provided money for her, everything. It seemed to be a symbiotic relationship on the outside. Now, before everything really blasted off, back in 2019, Aunt Serene originally online met a guy named Saqib. He was 18 at the time, but he lied and he told Aunt Serene that he was 27. Regardless, she started an affair with this guy. They started meeting up at different hotels. They were hanging out at parties. I'm sure at some point she found out that he was 18, but she didn't care. She was having fun. It's unknown if she had other boyfriends that she met online or through parties, but Saqib was her number one. They met up the most. They texted a lot, they sent each other explicit photographs, videos, conversations, and they were meeting up on a pretty regular basis over the course of 3 years. In fact, Saqib had bought her thousands of dollars of gifts or dinners, hotel stays, anything. It's not really confirmed in any of the stories, but I feel like he genuinely had some strong feelings for him. But she had no intention of leaving her marriage and ruining her life. She just wanted to have fun at anybody's expense, whether it was her daughter, whether it was Saqib, or anyone else that she dragged into her entire plot. This whole chapter of Aunt Serene's life, it was in full force. This wasn't something that went on for a few months or even a year. And she took a step back and thought, man, maybe I'm attaching myself to my daughter too much. Maybe I'm cheating on my husband too much. Maybe I'm not always there for my son. Maybe I'm not pursuing adult interest at my age that could turn into something great at 50. She never takes a step back and self-reflects on that. She's having too much fun. This went on for over 3 years. And if everything didn't happen, I think she'd still be out partying to this very day. This lady had no boundaries, respected nobody's boundaries, and she was only ramping up. I also want to reiterate, I still don't think that this was a conscious thing. She wasn't thinking, I want to destroy my marriage. I want to destroy my daughter's life. I want to do this. There's almost a sense of innocence with it where you're just following what feels good. But that's part of the reason why I like to talk to you guys about these cases. I'm interested in the human condition. I'm interested in what makes us tick. I'm interested in saying, that's bad, don't do that. However, why did this happen? And projecting our trauma onto our kids or reliving a new version of our trauma through our kids, it's not good, but it happens all the time. So I like to talk about these cases so you can look at yourself, look at the people around you, and figure out what's happening here. And is this okay? I am really not sure how this behavior went on for so long. It was not good for anybody. And it especially wasn't good for Saqib because he felt like Ansarine was just playing games with him. Over the course of 3 years, his feelings grew for her, and almost in a scary way, to the point that she decided to break things off with him. She told him she didn't want to see him anymore. They had started this relationship when he was 18 years old, and she was a much older woman in her mid-40s. He was very impressionable, and she knew exactly what she was doing too. And not only that, but it went on for so long. There was so much push, pull, him trying, him showering her with gifts, her giving him attention, her pulling back. It was actually probably kind of an addictive cycle too. But eventually she says, I don't want to see you anymore. This is getting weird. This is too much for me. I'm out. And he can't handle it. He starts to ramp up by sending her messages that are pretty threatening. At one point, he says to her, you ignoring me is really starting to piss me off. He tells her, I'm a crazy bastard. I don't know. That's literally just what he said. That's what he said to her. And she gets pretty worried by these messages, especially when he loses it and he tells her, I have some explicit photos of you, and I'm going to send them to your husband if you don't talk to me. This is blackmail. He's threatening to basically ruin her whole life. I mean, did she do it to herself? Sure. But is she scared by these statements? Absolutely. It's a culmination of everybody's bad behavior. My God, isn't that the worst? When we have a bunch of different people doing bad stuff and then it all just comes together at once. It's a nightmare. But Ansarine can't be the bad guy. She doesn't want to be the bad guy. She doesn't want to be at fault. And she wants to do something about it. So she starts off by telling her daughter, Mahek, that Saqib's being crazy. Saqib's sending me all these messages. He's threatening me. She also told her daughter that he didn't have explicit photos of her. She told her daughter that he had photoshopped her head onto somebody else's body, and they were fake nudes, and he was going to send them around to everyone, including her dad. And Mahek believes her. She 100% believes her mom. She goes to battle for her. I mean, this girl, she's a soldier. She will ride for you, literally. She didn't like the guy at this point. She's saying that he's crazy. She wants to take matters into her own hands. She feels like she needs to protect her mom. This is where I also have problems with Ansarine again. You've done something wrong and you're willing to stir up your daughter while you sit back there biting your nails and you say, okay, she's tough enough. She's gonna help me. She's gonna save me. And you're willing to let your daughter just ruin her life too? As I'm talking through this case, I'm trying to give you guys all different points because I want you to take everything that I point out and you you make your own decision. You know, come up with your own thoughts or ideas. But as I'm going through this, I feel like I'm in a roller coaster. I'm going for a loop. I'm over here, I'm over here, I'm over here. And I'm like, what is wrong with everybody in this story? It is fascinating to me how trauma can run you so unconsciously, and it can spread like a disease to people around you. Not only to your children, but other people that enter your life. She decides she just can't let this happen, and she needs to protect her mother at all costs. But interestingly enough, Saqib also had a little bit of a protector, and it was a guy named Hashim. Hashim was also about his age. He was 21, and I was just watching an interview that one of his uncles did a little bit after the trial was convicted, where he talked about him. After his nephew's passing, so many people reached out with different stories about Hashim, who he was as a person, what he was doing over the past couple of months in his life. Because a lot of times families, they don't know this stuff. We always hear the stories about, oh, he was such a great guy. He was so nice. When he walked into a room, he smiled and everything lit up. You know, that's how people always kind of get described. But to hear the details that his uncles got in the weeks after his passing were really fascinating. At one point, he was talking about how there was an older guy in a convenience store, and that older guy approached the family and told them about how he didn't have enough money to buy something at the convenience store, and Hashim was just like, oh, throw it in my order. Also, how he was spending a lot of time with elderly people that were lonely, and his family didn't even know that he was doing this stuff. He just did it for people around him. He just did it to make himself feel good. He did it to pass time. This is what this guy was doing in his free time. In 2022, in the age of the internet, in the age of TikTok, he was just sacrificing his time for others so that they would be a bit less lonely. And in the months leading up to his death, his friends, they asked him, you know, Hashim, where did this new friend, Saqib, come from? Like, they didn't really know Saqib before this. This isn't like Hashim and Saqib had been friends for years and years and years prior to this. So his friends were asking him, Hashim, how do you know this guy? Like, why have you been hanging out with him so much? And you know what Hashim told him? He said, I've been hanging out with him a lot because my friend is sad. He was hanging out with him because Saqib was upset over what was going on with Ansarine and Mahek. I don't even think Hashim knew all of the details of it. He was just there for him because he was his boy and he was feeling down. That's it. That's how he got dragged into all of this, by being a nice person. I have a love-hate relationship with this part of the story because y'all know I was raised real religious, and my grandma told me, okay, if you just go out into the world and you do good and you're a nice person, you take care of people, then God's gonna take care of you. Now, even though I'm not quite as religious as I used to be, I still have a lot of these like biblical morals and principles where I have this naivety thinking, okay, if I'm a good person and I do XYZ, then everything's gonna be okay. And it just blows my mind seeing how Hashim was such a good person, selflessly doing so much for people around him. And that characteristic is almost exactly what dragged him into this situation. Just doing something nice for somebody. I'm like, how did this happen? How did he get dragged into everybody else's bad behavior? It hurts my heart and it blows my mind. Saqib ramps up with the threats, and he's not getting anything from Ansarine. He's not getting responses, or at least responses that he wants to hear, and he's not seeing her. And so he says, you need to pay me $3,000 and all of this will go away. Well, Ansarine phrases this to Mahek as, well, now he's blackmailing me for money. He wants money. I can't get this money from your father, so I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. You know, Ansarine's acting helpless. She's acting scared, confused. Mahek, she feels like, well, I need to take care of my mom, and she does what she does. She huffs up her chest and says, I'm gonna fix this. Little does she know that one of the reasons that Saqib was asking for $3,000 wasn't just blackmail and extortion. It was because he said, hey, this is how much money I spent on you over the course of this relationship. And in order for me to go away and not be as resentful about this, I need you to pay me the money back. However, this was phrased to everyone else as, he's extorting me with these nude photos, he's extorting me for money, and we need to take care of this. Very, very similar stories, but intentionally leaving out some pieces of information. Not that it would have affected it too much, Ansarine still would have been just as scared. Now, what Saqib is doing is blackmail. It is extortion. But the way that Ansarine was presenting it to Mahek and her friends that also later got involved was by leaving the meat of the story, taking away some pieces, adding a few more, and then Ansarine would sit back and be like, what do we do? It's just a mess all around. So they recruit 6 of Mahek's friends, and they come up with a plan. Ansarine and Mahek decide that they're going to tell Saqib, okay, you won. We'll give you the $3,000, but my husband can't know. So meet me in this parking lot, we'll hand you the money, and then you leave me alone forever. And Saqib says, okay, that's not exactly what he wanted, but at least he's getting what he asked for, getting some type of closure, and maybe he can end it all. But the problem is, Saqib actually loved cars. He loved working on cars, but he didn't have one. He couldn't drive. So he didn't really have a way of getting all the way to this parking lot. And that's when he asked his friend Hashim. Hashim doesn't really want to do it. He's a good kid. This sounds like a mess. There's a lot going on, and, Mahek seems a little sketchy. But he says, dude, please, I don't want them to change their minds. There's a saying we can meet tomorrow. Can you please just help me out? Let's do it. And he says, okay. They told him to meet at a supermarket at about 1 o'clock in the morning. The 2 guys get there, and they pull up in the parking lot, and they see Mahek's Audi, but they also notice another car in the parking lot that's very close by. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but when they saw these 2 cars in the parking lot in the late hours, it looked like they knew each other, and it looked like it was a setup. And that's exactly what it was. I wouldn't be surprised if Ansarine and Mahek never expected everything that happened to happen, but I do believe that they never planned to give him the money, and they planned to have all of these other people scare him or rough him up in some way. They were wearing balaclavas. There were 8 of them in total, and there were only the 2 guys. That's very scary. I have no idea what exactly they planned to do. But when Saqib and Hashim see the extra car, they pull up slowly and they say, nah, dude, I'm good. And they leave the parking lot. And as soon as Ansarine and Mahek see them leaving, they're like, okay, hey, we came here to do this. Let's do it. So they start chasing after them. Both cars are in pursuit of Hashim and Saqib. And at one point, Mahek calls Saqib on the phone. And we'll never know exactly what was said, but the call did not last long, and people said some words were exchanged because her friend that was a car mechanic, he was also in the car. He was the one driving the Audi. She's yelling, she's screaming at him, she's threatening him. Who knows what she said? But right after that, Saqib got off of the phone and called 999, the emergency line. Now, I'm not gonna play the call, and in fact, we'll show a picture of kind of what the pursuit looked like, but I'm not gonna put the video in here. If y'all have been watching me for a while, over time, I don't like to put in very sensitive moments of people's final hours, especially when they're calling for help. And I don't fault you if you do listen to 911 calls or if you do see certain footage. People get curious, they look, but here we don't do that anymore. I try to keep the 911 calls out. I try to keep out very sensitive footage. If I don't want to see it, I'm not going to make you look at it either. But what I do know from the 911 calls in the transcript was Saqib did say, these people are chasing me. They're trying to run me off the road. They have balaclavas on, and I don't know them. He repeatedly tells the 911 operator that he thinks that he's going to die. This is a very high-speed chase. They're ramming the back of the car. They won't stop. He's asking for help. He can't even tell them where he's at because the cars are moving so fast. He's just, please help me, please help me. There's a scream on the line, and the call ends. they ran Saqib off the road, and they ran Hashim off the road, who, like I told you guys, was literally just there to help. There was a lot of footage of the car chase. It was pretty obvious what kind of cars they were. They might have actually gotten license plates in the footage, but either way, a lot of people in town knew about the Bakaris and what had been going on between them as well as Saqib. So they go to their house, and the first person they run into is Mahek Bakari. And, ooh, this girl is a little gaslighter.
So we stayed here, and then we went straight to Nottingham.
She's saying they went to a completely different city than where the chase happened. Also, can I point out, this footage was not top of mind for me when I was describing Aunt Serene sitting there like, the whole time. But look at what she is literally doing. Oh my God, bro. I didn't even realize it was this spot on. It's Aunt Serene in the corner, scared, and then Mahek with her hood on, you know, ready to handle it, ready to lie, like, okay, I'll handle it. It's the exact energy that I described earlier. Bitch, you lies.
There's a car that's coming on the right-hand side, a Seattle Leon, don't know the model or anything, but it was blue, comes straight down, no speed, nothing, normal on the right-hand side. We were always on the left-hand side. This right-hand side car's come now, the Leon, the blue one, has come straight next to me and come right in front of me, not very close. I've always said to myself, I'm a very good driver when it comes to this. I've been driving for 5 years, 45 years, and I've said to myself, always keep a 2 to 3 second rule gap, always, when I've said to myself, always done that. So this car's come not close, I've always braked. So I was doing 60, it was 70, I think it was 70 on the dual carriage or 60. I was doing 50 straight away, went back, went to 50 to 60, went back. This car didn't do anything to me. I don't know who, just a normal car going on the right to the left. The silver car, I don't know which brand it was, model. It's come zooming down. I've kept this 2 to 3 second rule gap, and the blue Leon's in front, I'm at the back.
These are the most annoying type of liars. The, hey, I'm just being honest. Hey, I'm just telling everything that happened. I'm gonna admit my mistakes. They'll admit some little tiny mistakes that may not even be real. Maybe they made them up. And they're like, look at how honest I am. Look at how responsible I am. Here's all of it. So what do you think? That's exactly the type of liar she is.
I braked, and I said to my mum, what is this car trying to do? And my mum said, May, just keep your distance. Everything's going to be okay. It's okay. Just a reckless few people, just reckless because they know it's all the way down. If there's any cameras, there's going to be cameras.
What happened to being in another city, Mahek? What happened then? They had you on camera with your license plate over here, huh? And we had to switch up the story real fast. Confidence, no matter what story she's telling.
Going to 40, this car was not threatening me, but agitating the blue car. Agitating the blue. So the blue car went onto the right lane, which is the overtaking lane, and the silver car went onto the right lane with the same car as the blue. So then the blue car went onto the left, and the silver car kept to the left, and it was just harassing. Like the blue car was trying to let you go, like go, you can go now because I'm letting you. But this silver car was not.
Oh my God, I can't stand her. And this is where she describes how the car was actually crashed. In her own words.
I didn't see. All I've seen is they've hit, and all I see is right, like a swerve. The silver car swerved to not my side, to the other side of the dual carriageway where the metal bits are basically. And I didn't see the car after that. I didn't hear a bang. Apparently there was mentioned there was a tree. I didn't see no tree. I didn't see anything. I've gone straight on. I've looked at my mom and I said, Mom, what? I was just in shock.
That was just her version of events. It was an accident. She was shocked. She stayed 2 to 3 seconds away following a rule. I will never get tired of hearing confident liars. The police didn't buy it. They were arrested the morning of the collision and they were put into jail the same exact day. Shortly, just a few days later, they arrested another one of her accomplices, and then in March, they got the rest of them. All of these people were tried, and guys, what always happens when you put a bunch of 20-year-olds together in a group that are on trial for murder? They turn on each other. They start telling the whole stories. They tell everything. And of course, Mahek and Ansarine were right in the center of it all. When this all went to trial, Ansarine absolutely crumbled. She claimed that her relationship with Saqib was a total mistake. In fact, she even claimed that it was a one-off mistake. But after the investigation, they looked into his iCloud and they saw photos, videos, messages dating all the way back to 3 years. This was not a one-off mistake, and it shot her credibility immediately. She crumbled, she cowered in the corner. She even talked on the stand about how much she loved the party life, how it felt like she was living a double life, and she just couldn't believe it. She was having so much fun. She really kind of softened up during the trial, but Mahek did not at all. She doubled down. She said that Saqib was a stalker. She said that he was manipulative. She even claimed that he had also manipulated or photoshopped pictures of her nude and put them online. She cited his text messages on the stand, saying at one point he told her mother, "I'm gonna do something crazy that you're gonna regret later." The amount of hate that she had for this guy was so evident, and I don't think it helped her at all during the trial. A couple things really flipped her story around. Well, one, they demonstrated how close of a relationship that Ansarine and Mahek had using their TikToks, using their text messages. They were incredibly close, and it was obvious that when Mahek would do anything for her mom. Meanwhile, Ansarine couldn't do much to stand up for herself, but she was pretty good at getting herself into trouble. Another thing, the Audi that was driven that night actually had recorded speeds of up to 100 miles per hour on a public road at that exact time, which completely flipped the story where she claimed, "I was staying 2 to 3 seconds away from the cars." She was a liar, and she hated this guy. But every time a new piece of evidence came up, they changed their story a little bit. After it came out that the Audi had reached speeds of 100 on the road, Ansarine and Mahek said, "Okay, well, we weren't actually in Nottingham that night. Yeah, sure, we were there. Okay, we weren't actually going, 2 to 3 seconds behind the car. We did speed up pretty fast. However, we did it because we were just hoping that we could make him stop and have him sit down and have a conversation with us." They actually said that. Every time a new piece of information was introduced, they would change their story around. Also, Mahek got off on a pretty bad foot with the investigators when they asked for her phone password and she repeatedly gave them the wrong password and said, "What? That was my password. I don't know what changed." Yeah, they did not trust this chick as far as they could throw her. In the end, the courts handed down a guilty sentence, rightfully so. But what's interesting to me is they spared Ansarine and Mahek absolutely no mercy. Mahek was given life imprisonment with a 31-year minimum. Ansarine was also given life imprisonment with a minimum of 26 years. Of course, they're both appealing. I don't think that any of them thought that TikTok and this love triangle or anything would lead to such dire consequences. They really just thought that they were having fun. But their egos, their lies, and their deadly motives caught up to them pretty quickly. And you know what? Personally, I love a little bit of justice. And I love that no leniency was given. Because if they had gotten away with this, who knows what they would have done next?